Nebraska Preps post-game with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
Yep, you know that voice. Very famous voice by now. Jacob Padilla and myself. Did I do that right for all you English majors out there? You just never know with me. Sometimes I just make stuff up. Does myself come after the and?
Yes.
Well, thank you.
And you didn't do Jacob and I, so good job.
All right. I am a college graduate. College is not overrated, ladies and gentlemen. That is JP, that voice you heard. Back for another edition of Nebraska Preps postgame. And it's kind of an interesting week. I mean, a nice little, I don't know, wet your palate a little before this week, and then you'll have one game played before Metro Holiday Tournament. So we know a little bit, right? We've got, how many did you just tell me undefeated? I think Northeast makes 6 in the top 10.
6 in Class A are undefeated right now through 2 weeks.
I joked with you off air or off pod. Is that a thing? I had to ask somebody smarter than me. What do I make of 3 Lincoln teams playing really, really well, and one of them isn't Pius?
Well, I said I liked both of Lincoln Northeast and Lincoln
am going to give
Southwest.
you a little credit for Northeast.
Yeah. They've got
because
they've got a solid little squad there.
If anybody's outside of a Northeast Rocket alum that they were going to be interesting this season, they're not telling you the truth.
The thing I like about them is they've got, like, you look at their starting lineup, and they've got 5 different guys. Like, none of them are, like, Division I, like, guys that are going to put up 25 a game. But they got 5 different guys that can hurt you in different ways. So it could be one guy this game, could be one guy the next. Like, Porter Basil's a tough matchup. Xander Beard's a really skilled scorer. Christian Wynn lit up Papio in the first half of the game that I saw.
Kind of like Wynn.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of different
I think he's
pieces
probably the best. Pure isn't the word I'm looking for. He may be the best bucket getter of the bunch, right?
I'd probably put Xander Beard there, but Wynn's size and athleticism, length kind of gives him an edge in some respects there. I think Beard's with his footwork and his touch and his moves, he's the craftiest scorer. But yeah, like I said, they've got guys that can hurt you in different ways.
So let's stay right there in the capital city. Would you and Westside gets Southeast tomorrow, and I would not put Southeast in that discussion, but
they're really young.
A team that we said was probably a year ahead of schedule, and this was without arguably their best player being healthy for a good chunk of last year, Lincoln Southwest, right? Maybe a little bit of addition by subtraction with, Bohr transferring. They played so well at times last year, even without the full complement of players. Ryland Smith battling injuries a good portion of the time. I mean, what do we make of Southwest?
So they've got 4 guys averaging 11 or more points right now. Ryland Smith leading the way, 17 points a game, really efficient. And then Ben Hunziker just doing it all. He's averaging 11 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 4 steals. Just kind of, he's the ultimate do-everything type of utility guard. And with him kind of more running the offense, it's allowed Smith to kind of focus on scoring a little bit more, even though he's a quality playmaker as well. So then you've got Lucas Helms, who has made a huge leap from last year. I liked what I saw from him in the summer. He made a big leap from just the spring to the summer playing for Lincoln Supreme. So he's a guy that's averaging double digits for them. So it's a really quality squad. They're 4-0 right now. And what you talked about, Pius goes and loses to Omaha South, 67-55, 22 turnovers in that game. You had Ricky Lofton and Jacob Martin both combining for a really efficient 35 points.
Yeah, and if they can play that way over time, that changes them dramatically. But with those 2 guys, it's all about playing under control in basketball decision making.
Oh, for sure. And Ricky had 8 assists in that game, and plus 5 rebounds, 4 steals. So that's one of his best games that he's playing. Then he turned around and had 25 against Lincoln Southwest in the next game, but 7 turnovers. And Omaha South lost 78-59 to Southwest. So you just look at, again, it's not, you don't love the transitive property, but seeing what South did to Pius and turned around what Southwest did to South, I think right now Southwest has a pretty pretty strong claim on top team in Lincoln right now.
So let me ask you something, all biased aside, because you coach him during the summer. So who do you slot next, the Templemeyer-led Spartans, or do you like the Rockets, who you kind of a little ominous foreshadowing? Oh, I think I kind of like Lincoln Northeast before we kind of started these basketball previews. Both teams right there. East with the one loss, the Rockets undefeated, but East probably played the tougher schedule.
For sure, because I don't think Northeast has played anybody as good as Prep, and that's the one loss, and it was on a buzzer beater. But the Spartans are 3-1, and Carter Templemeyer's led them in scoring every game. I went up and watched them win at Gretna on Saturday, and Templemeyer had 18 in that game. He was the only one in double digits for that team. But what Jeff Campbell is doing is he's using his full roster, and he's playing basically every healthy player, all 11 guys that were suited up. Connor Hamilton's going to be out for a little bit, but he played in their first 2 games. Malachi Coleman didn't play in the first 2 coming out the football season, but he played in the last 2. So they're using everybody. And I don't know if that's necessarily something that you want to do all season long, playing 11, 12 guys, but he's got the ability to do that, and you've got different pieces that can match up depending on the situation.
So who do you think? It's not going to be Marfisi. Like, who's kind of going to be maybe the odd man out?
Well, I think they're going to have to narrow down kind of the front court rotation a little bit. They've got Van Genderen, they've got Storer, they've got Coleman, obviously. Those are 3 guys right there that are probably going to play strictly the 5 for them. So you're going to probably make some decisions there, but you got a couple of seniors, Isaac Mickle and Logan Shirk. Those are probably the guys that are kind of on the edge right there, but those are guys, seniors that have been in the program for a while.
Shirk is a senior.
So they've got experience there as well, and you can turn to them for the specific roles because Mickle can come in and knock down shots if you need him in a pinch. So even if you look at the depth, they've got a lot of pieces. I don't know that Northeast can match up with that depth. I think maybe you give a slight edge to the starting 5 for Northeast right now, but East, I think they've been really impressive what they've done, getting off to a 3-1 start after losing a guy that did so much for them last year in Carter Glenn, who averaged almost 20 a game.
Yeah, McPhail has seemed to pick up kind of that backcourt punch as he's kind of growing into his body a little bit, still a little bit slight for a guard. But every time I hear you say Mickle, I always think you're going to say Mick because Mick has been a kind of a quiet little nice complimentary piece.
And he's a guy that long-term is going to be a really nice piece for him.
And just a sophomore.
Just a sophomore, right? Yep. But that's another guy that is going to get better as the season goes on, and I think will become a bigger part of what they do. Right now, he's just kind of making his debut at the varsity level, kind of figuring some things out. But down the stretch, second half of the season, I think he's going to be a weapon for them. So, I like what East has done. They've really impressed me. I didn't quite know what they were going to be, again, because Glenn did so much for them last year. And heck, he's starting at Nebraska Wesleyan as a freshman, putting up 14 a game. So kid was pretty darn good.
And we both like Coach Campbell.
Yeah, and he's done a good job in managing this team. And
death taxes and the Spartans maximizing in basketball.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's kind of how it goes, right?
Yep. So Lincoln's got off to a pretty good start. I think we knew Southeast was going to be really young, especially without Jake Applegate playing. You lose kind of some of your veterans there. So he's turned everything over to the sophomores and freshmen outside of Wade Voss, who's a solid junior. But that's going to be a team that they're going to have to learn on the fly as they go. They're going to be. I think that'll help them down the line in a couple of years playing all these guys right now. But it's going to be tough to get wins with those guys. But yeah, and then we mentioned the Pius loss to South, and then they turn around and go down to the Thunderdome to take on Bellevue West on Saturday, and I caught that one as well. And that was a old-fashioned shootout in the first half. It was 41-37 at halftime. Bell West put up 27 in the first quarter, and then Pius kind of fired back in the second. And then in the third and fourth quarters, Bell West just 27 apiece in each of the second half quarters. And Pius just kind of slipped away, couldn't keep up there. But not for a lack of trying from Jared Bohr. He had 30 points on 11 of 14 shooting, riotous shots.
And you can get that with him. He's extremely streaky. Hasn't met a ton of shots that he doesn't like. But I still think the key for them is sharing the basketball and offensive efficiency, right? They've got to handle it in the backcourt. Find another ball handler, a complementary piece to take some pressure off Bohr, who isn't what I would call a natural point guard or distributor. You know, he's got a scorer's mentality. And when you play with that many bigs, it will be interesting to see what kind of complementary pieces can play alongside him.
Yeah, and Sam Hastreiter was really good, 20 points, doing work in the paint. He's got really good body control.
His depth, too. He's got good touch.
His spin move in the paint, he does a great job of keeping his balance on that and finding angles to score, pump fakes, footwork. He was doing work in the paint, but outside of those two, they just didn't really get much of anything. Brady Christensen had 9 points on 9 shots. Jack Hastreiter never got it going, and neither did Jackson Kessler. And right now, they don't have a ton coming off the bench. So they combination of not getting enough guys going, and they could not stick with Bellevue West, whether the transition game in the half court. Evan Inselman
speed.
Yeah, that's Evan Inselman had I believe it was 16 points, missed 1 shot all game. William Kyle, third, 14 points, 5 blocks, kind of doing what he does, and he had some self-created buckets too, little mid-post, low-post buckets.
If there's one guy who's summer has been kind of a springboard into the versatility that we've seen so far in the basketball season, it's probably William Kyle III. He comes up a ton, I know, but if you look at what he was showing at the tail end of the summer and what a catalyst this could be for this year, his offensive repertoire, he's been in the bag a little bit, right? He's shown a lot more offensive capability as opposed to just putbacks and dunks.
Yep, and all 10 players that played for Bellevue West scored. 9 of them scored at least twice. And the guy that orchestrated it all was Josiah Dotzler, again, with another great game, 20 points on 8 of 12 shooting, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. And he's been 20-plus in 3 of their first 4 games, and the other one was a near triple-double. So Josiah, through the first 4 games, is averaging 19 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 steals while shooting 62% from the field, 44% from 3, and 75% from the line.
Yeah, the ability to keep him out of the paint, I think, is the key.
He's got 21 assists and 6 turnovers in 4 games. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's not bad
for a guy who hasn't played point guard in a couple of years.
In a long time. Let's get to your Northeast Rockets because we kind of got away from them. I say Yorb just because, right, it's like, you know, whether you're talking about Valdez or whomever, Basil. Northeast has some options. The schedule will toughen up some. They hammered Northwest the last time out, but I think they have a good quality win. I like this Papillion team. Their schedule has been extremely unforgiving. If you're a Monarchs fan with Bellevue West and Millard North, they've seen Northeast. It has not been easy pickings for a Papio bunch, but I think that's going to turn out to be a good win for Northeast.
Yeah, I was there for the first half of that. I had to run down to Lincoln to catch Grand Island and Elkhorn South down there, but that was a good battle back and forth in the first half. Northeast ended up pulling it out in the second half. Like I said, Christian Wynn had 15 in the first half of that game. But the key for Papio is, are they going to be able to find enough around Kyle Ingerson and Luke Lindenmeyer? Yeah. Right now, those guys have been scoring the vast majority of their points.
Ingerson was fantastic the other night against Millard North. Like we talked about him for a couple of years now. When he gets ready and he asserts himself, he's a tough matchup. He's got great length. He's got tremendous range. Sometimes with him, disinterested is not the word, but when he's engaged offensively and kind of realizes what the matchup is, he's capable of being a different kind of player. There aren't a lot of people that look like him with that kind of skill set in the Metro outside of maybe a guy like Jason Green.
Yeah, so they've Ingerson and Lindenmeyer, they're getting off to a great start, but again, they lost so much in the backcourt.
Yeah.
With Aiden Graham and Joey Hylock, and
now Keegan's got to assume the role, who's become kind of the Iron Man. I mean, he plays a huge amount of minutes.
Yeah, Keegan and Ben Boudreau after playing very little varsity previously, are now kind of thrown into the spotlight there at the guard, and they're kind of figuring things out early in the season. So that's going to be a key for them. But yes, Northeast again with that 5-man unit, they're going to have a chance to be pretty solid. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of that schedule stiffen up a little bit for them in the future.
So just to kind of recap Lincoln, where we started, you'd probably go southwest, east, then northeast, then Pius early on?
It's tough because nobody in Lincoln outside of Pius has played a team as tough as Bellevue West, so I don't necessarily know that I'd hold that too much against them, especially the way they played in the first half. Like, nobody was beating Bellevue West the way they played on Saturday night. Nobody, the way they were shooting the ball, the way everybody was scoring. But I think just based on the results, they're the only one with 2 losses there, so you kind of do have to slot them back there. Their upside is still definitely to be closer to the top than where they are now, but you got to judge off of what we've seen so far, so I think that's pretty fair.
Let's go back to the top half. You referenced Bellevue West and their versatility. Let's go to Millard North, who
another 4-0 team.
For all intents and purposes, when they move the ball and it doesn't get sticky, this is a tough team to kind of guard. It's not St. Thomas and Hunter Salas tough, but when they move the ball, they've got a few more options, right?
And I feel like their supporting cast, they haven't even really settled in yet. Like, so we kind of wondered what Jason Green would look like as kind of the lead guy after we've seen him as a utility guy playing off of Hunter and Sane and all these guys the last few years. Well, 21, 11, 3 assists, 4 blocks, 2 steals on 64, 38, 75 shooting. So pretty darn good in that lead role. David Harmon's 16 a game, efficient, again, going to the rack. I feel like everybody else are outside of them. It's kind of game to game. They're still figuring out.
Little bit of an X factor. I've actually seen them a couple of times live. So the key for them is they need consistency in the backcourt, right? Another couple of ball handlers. With Gaethje, I like Jackson Page, who's a really good defensive player. His willingness to defend has been a real pleasant surprise because he's not a big guard, but he's committed to guarding. They're going to need that when it's all said and done.
And that's the key for those guys that maybe are lacking in size. It's like, can you make that from a weakness into a strength? Can you really get up underneath people?
Yeah,
and
Jackson Page has played
difficult?
really, really well defensively.
So, yeah, it's Page, it's Eli Gaith, it's Isaiah McMorris, it's Neil Mosser. All those guys have kind of had moments, but none of them have kind of quite got going consistently yet. So that's the key for Millard North, kind of reaching its ceiling. I think Nick Dolezal has been solid.
Yeah, I really like. He's been a nice complimentary piece, and I'll be curious to see what happens with Millard North, and maybe I'll get another snapshot. As you know, they've got the really impressive second half over Omaha Westside, and Westside kind of like early in football will be better here in the next couple of weeks, especially with Caleb getting back into the fold, who changes that dynamic tremendously, especially defensively. Millard North is going to have to find ways to handle the basketball.
Yeah,
right. I think that's kind of the thing for them because David Harmon has been good off the bounce. Jason Green is a good grab and go guy. The ball handling. Will Jackson Page kind of emerge as the primary ball handler, decision maker for them? I think he's got a quarterback's mentality in terms of being able to run the show. But what do you do with Eli and McMorris and kind of those complementary pieces? Monster's shown to be a great spot-up shooter, especially when you get him the ball in areas which he could score. I actually think perimeter defense and ball handling will be key for them.
For sure. And that's the crazy thing about a team like Millard North. 4-0, looking pretty good. Obviously, already have that win against Bellevue or against Westside. And they've got as much upside as any team. It's almost a parallel to your squad in the football season where, they're pretty good right out the gates, but with the number of young players that are in their rotation, they've got a chance to really get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, they're and we'll get to them, right? It's probably what I would call the number 3 team. Kevin Stubblefield is off to a great start. I'll tell you the guy that's arguably, improved isn't the word. He's healthy, and I think he understands his role. Tate Advadi has been a great addition early in the season. He's been ultra efficient. His shot selection has been fantastic. He hasn't really forced it. He's off to an amazing start, and he's kind of a key cog because when they go young, and they have the ability to do this, they had some spots, some moments the other day where they had Oddbody, Stubblefield, C.J. Mitchell, Caleb, and Charlie Davis. Like the ball movement and the shot selection, and that's without a guy, a knockdown shooter like Payson Gillespie, a really good player like Chandler Meeks, a fantastic, get to the rim guy like Reggie Thomas. You have Logan Wilson, who's really good defensively. They have as much depth as anybody in the Metro not named Bellevue West.
Oh, for sure. And it's what happens when you don't have a single senior in your rotation a year ago. You got to bring all those guys back. And like a guy like Kevin Stubblefield wasn't really part of that last year. He suited up varsity, didn't play a whole lot. Now he's a piece that you can really rely on as a backup front court player.
Really shown some. You can tell he's comfortable playing with Caleb and CJ, who he plays with in the summer. I really like that unit. When they were out on the floor, and Caleb's still trying to get his legs underneath him, but he showed a lot of flashes against Norfolk, who, listen, they haven't really had the kind of schedule yet. They'll get Southeast tomorrow. They had Millard North, obviously, kind of feeling their way along. But if Gillespie's shooting it well, Tate Oddbody's been very efficient. The key for them is sharing the basketball, number one, and committing to keeping guys out of the paint defensively. Millard North did what they wanted to in the second half, just putting the ball on the deck, finishing. It got to be kind of silly at times with Westside's defensive effort. So for them, if they can make the transition to guarding, that offense will be just fine because they'll be able to score.
Totally agree. And I think, 3-1 start for Westside. The other two undefeated Class A teams we haven't hit on. First,
they're coming.
Omaha Central, 5-0, and that's after a crazy comeback at Elkhorn South, or against Elkhorn South at home on
They've
Friday.
shown some resolve, haven't they? It wasn't pretty against North. They found a way to get that one done, and they hung in there when not a lot was going right against the Storm. That's a pretty mentally tough bunch, at least early on.
So they were down 16-4 right out of the gates at the end of the first quarter. They trailed 44-32 with about 5 minutes to go, and Jay Dawson just took over. Scored 13 of their last 18 points, finished with a really efficient 36 to lead Central to the 50-48 come from behind win. And then they turned around and beat Kearney 72-60 on Saturday. So Eagles are off to a 5-0 start, and Jay Dawson didn't have a great game in that the OPS final. Not that anybody on the court did for either team. That was a rock fight.
There wasn't a ton of great shooting, right? I remember Mason Strong in that one was like 6 of 17, and we're going to get to North here in a second, and Dawson didn't shoot it well either.
But, man, I saw some of the highlights from that Elkhorn South game, and, man, Dawson was putting the full arsenal on display, hitting some ridiculously tough shots. So
I've got it in my Rolodex. Pretty good win at Kearney, right? Kearney's still kind of feeling their way along, but to go on the road, it's never an easy place to play at Kearney with Coach Baranik's bunch. That's a good win for Omaha Central.
And with Central kind of losing the pieces that they did and plugging in guys that don't have a lot of varsity experience, they need Jay Dawson to be one of the best players in the state. And for the most part, I think he's done that so far this season. And that's why they're 5-0. And PJ Davis, he scored the other 5 of that last 18.
He's the X factor for me.
He's the other guy that's got to be solid for them consistently, game in and game out, because they need a solid 40 to 50 points from those two every game.
He's a tough matchup. He's long. His length is much greater than his actual height. When he puts it on the deck and he gets on the glass, when he doesn't just settle for threes, he's a different player, man. He's got a lot in there when he maximizes out there.
Yeah, and then the other undefeated team is Creighton Prep at 4-0, who finds a way to keep winning despite being in these close games. They beat Millard West by 4 points on Saturday, and man, thoughts are out to my guy Zach Grangenet for Millard West Jr., who broke his ankle in that game, coming down one possession game, just caught a guy the wrong way, went down. feel awful for that kid. He deserves so much better. But Prep found a way to win, and right now it's Martell Evans 18 a game, Luke Junger 16 a game, and then Joey Reichel filling in 12 a game, shooting well from the 3-point line,
making the most of his opportunity. Right,
and they really needed it with Casey O'Malley going down in the first game. He hasn't been a part of this 4-0 start. Scored 6 points in the opener before hurting his ankle, and he's been out since. So Sean Ramachandran's been kind of the glue guy. I saw he had 11 rebounds on Saturday, I think it was, so or one of their games last week. So they're finding a way to win these games. I think, again, we haven't seen them at full strength. We'll have to wait to see what they look like when O'Malley is back in the lineup, because he's a big piece of what we expected for this season. But
and a good test this week, right, with a tough Gretna bunch who, Coach Feakin back in town was sending him the best as the head boss with the Dragons, and then they get Lincoln Southwest on Saturday. It should be a good week for Omaha Creighton Prep to see where they're at.
Yep. So hopefully O'Malley can get healthy soon, and we'll get a chance to see what they really look like. But other team I think we need to mention Class A is Grand Island, who made history on Friday. Become the first team from Nebraska to play a nationally televised game. They went down to the Norm Stewart Classic down at Mizzou Arena, and it was a tough one on Friday. I watched that game live. That ended up being a 53-41 loss to Vashon, a team out of Missouri in St. Louis there, and they battled. They had a lead at one point. It was close going in the fourth quarter, and they just kind of went cold and couldn't find a way to score. But Isaac Trout, 24 points, 8 rebounds. He had 4 assists, leading to 10 points. So he accounted for 34 of their 41 points by himself between scoring and assisting. But they turned around on Saturday late and beat Blue Valley, a team featuring a Division I Missouri commit in Aiden Shaw, who's a freak athlete. And they win 50-31. Isaac scores 30 himself on 11 of 14 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3, and 5 of 6 from the line, plus 10 rebounds.
His efficiency, without always having the complementary pieces, continues to remain impressive.
Well, and the 3-ball hasn't quite got going for him so far this season, and he has taken some really, really difficult threes, so that's understandable. So 3 of 7 from 3 is probably his best shooting performance yet. That's good to see. But in the process, he broke the school scoring record, I believe. So Isaac just kind of doing what you expect from them, but good for them to go and get that win. They've had a really tough schedule to open the season. And now that they got that win under the belt, got a chance to go experience playing outside of Nebraska. And again, nationally televised, that's never happened before. So that was pretty cool to watch. And Isaac threw down a couple of poster dunks. The first one against Vashon, I tweeted out. I was watching that one live. That was ridiculous. The kid thought he was going to take a charge, and then Isaac just kept going up and up and up and throwing down on his head. And then he got a big one over Shaw, I think, in the Blue Valley game as well.
You talk about body types and frame. I think when people – so I think the three-point shooting is going to come to him. His body has changed dramatically over the last 6-7 months. He's growing. He is a big, strong kid. It's not kind of the skinny guy that used to stand behind the arc and knock down threes as a sophomore. He's a much bigger, stronger player. I think he's going to grow into that.
And he's going to be a really good college player, especially going through this experience of having to do so much for Grand Island. I think that'll really help him kind of stretch his limits, figure out all the different ways that he can impact a game. And then once he gets to college, he can find a role to settle in and specialize more in a few areas and allow him to be effective that way.
Yeah, let's jump down to B real quick, because
only 3 undefeated teams through 2 weeks left.
And that I think that's going to be how it is.
Yeah.
Between C1 and B, it will be highly, highly, highly competitive. You had the fantastic game with Ron Colley and Concordia. Concordia is a team that I like. Ron Colley is a team I know you like. Yeah. Actually, we both like.
I like Concordia too, for sure.
Yeah. But you had a great point off pod. Concordia has some streaky players.
Yeah.
And they showed you that with a win over Roncalli, then the loss to Fort Calhoun.
Exactly. And Fort Calhoun's off to a 4-0 start. They're a good team with the Shorts twins and Grayson Bowman there. But, yeah, I think Carson Masson and Zach Kalous, they are really good shooters, but they are not afraid to let it fly. And if shots aren't falling that night, then I think teams are going to have a chance to stay with them. They've got some good pieces in the front court with Justin Otten and Zach Alharathi. So they've got some size they can rely on a little bit too when the shot isn't quite falling. But I think it's a live by the three, die by the three type of situation. And I didn't see the shooting numbers from that game at all. But that was a really good win against Roncalli.
And we'll see what happens with their version of the Metro Holiday tournaments. But how long, or what do you want to see from Beatrice, who's off to the really good start, to see if they belong in that kind of that upper echelon with Skutt and Platteview?
Yeah, one of the three. Those are the other two. Those are the three undefeated teams right there. Beatrice 3-0 with wins over Nebraska City, Crete, and Aurora. So none of the teams that were expected to kind of be in that upper echelon, none of them have been particularly close. They've kind of looked like the better team for sure in all three of those games. And they've got a couple pieces coming back from last year. They lost kind of their main the guys that really drove the engine last year. But Elliot Juergens is a really experienced point guard and can impact the game in multiple ways. And Tucker Timmerman, baseball commit, started for them at the 4 last year. He's back as well. So they've got some experience there. The key is how are the new guys kind of filling in, and haven't got a chance to see what that looks like yet. But, yeah, they've done all you can ask for them to this point, so they're going to have a chance to keep proving it as the season goes on.
Considering we both kind of know their personnel really well, what do you think is going to be the difference between Skutt and Platteview? Is it the depth and the multiple pieces of Skutt against the star power of Platteview? Is there something else different when you kind of look at the teams at the top?
That is ultimately going to be it, because I feel like the depth of Skutt, if you can keep Connor Milliken in check, or at the very least make him inefficient with it, because he's going to get his shots no matter what you do. He's averaging 26, 8, and 2 on 50, 40, 60 shooting this season, plus about 5 stocks a game. So he is doing everything for them. You mentioned Michael Wiebelhaus. He's averaging about 11 a game.
That's kind of my guy. He's their X factor.
And so they're getting
along with Draper.
They're getting enough out of the other guys, but that's going to be the key: is can you force Milliken have a 20 on 20 shots type of game versus a 25 on 17 shots.
When you look at the matchups potentially, and we're way far away, I always try to forecast, like, they would need to find an answer for, obviously, with Jake, who has been really, really good for Omaha Skutt, and he's kind of the one different piece when you look at the difference in the teams.
And I feel like with Grant Dvorak and James Ninifu, you've got some pieces defensively that you can throw at Milliken to make life tough. Ninifu's really long. Dvorak is really disciplined defensively, works hard.
He hounded a couple of those guys from West Side pretty good.
So I feel like they've got some pieces to make that matchup work in their favor. But at the end of the day, Milliken is one of the best players in the state, so you can only do so much to hold a guy like that down. So I wish we could get that matchup early in the season, but in the meantime, we're just going to have to watch these games go. Unfortunately, Skutt's only played 2 games. I believe they're 2-0, but they've outscored Mount Michael and North Platte by a combined 129-60.
Yeah, and Mount Michael off to a 3-2 start, a team that may ultimately be better than that. They lost so much from a year ago, but Coach Spooner, a guy that both you and I think the world of, and he's kind of double dipping as their AD as well, man. It's a lot going on at Elkhorn Mount Michael.
Yep, and just C1, 12 undefeated teams. Unfortunately, we mentioned Fort Calhoun, Concordia, and all them. 11 undefeated teams in Class C2, and unfortunately, the Humphrey Lindsay Holy Family and Howells Dodge game that I was planning on going on Friday got postponed.
That's everybody, I think, that was going. That isn't like a Metro fan. I know Mike Sauter and those guys were going out there too.
Planning on riding out with Sauter. So
that was going to be the game.
So that's unfortunate. We'll have to wait for that matchup later in the season. But probably the biggest game to put on your schedule this week is not in the Metro. It's Bellevue West heading up to Sioux Falls to. They kind of changed the schedule for the part of the Hoop Hall Classic. Bellevue West is facing Corona Centennial from California, who is a top 10 team nationally, according to Max Preps.
Yeah.
So that'll be Saturday afternoon at the Pentagon at 1 o'clock. So we'll have a chance to see how good Bellevue West really is.
What doesn't the Pentagon do? Right? They host a lot of good basketball. One of the fastest 30 minutes and change in podcast history with my man Jacob Padilla. I'm Old DB. We'll be back next week with Nebraska Preps postgame. Ton of hoops. Don't you dare miss it.
a Hurrdat Media Production.